Okay, cool. So away we go. So welcome to today's session. My name is Josh Brothheim. I am the training manager at Sumo Logic. And what we're going to be doing today is going over, as it says on the screen, rapid discovery with observability. We're going to make today fun. I hope today is fun for you anyhow. But what we want to do is we want to make today somewhat interactive. So we're going to do some slides. There's a bunch of slides, a lot of slides, but we're going to do some labs in between there. So what we're going to do in probably about 20 minutes or so, maybe a little bit longer, and we'll do a few times throughout the day, is log into Sumo Logic. We'll have training accounts for you to utilize, and we'll go ahead and utilize Sumo Logic and see how it can help with observability. And so specifically, we'll look at some examples using Lambda. We'll look at real user monitoring, service maps, traces, span analytics. Got a lot of stuff to cover with you guys today. So looking forward to the next hour and a half. We'll probably get you out here a little early, but that's the plan. Yeah, I like to start most of my observability classes or sessions with this quote. I think it's funny or humorous. I don't know if it's laugh out loud funny. But what it says is we replaced our monolith with microservices so that every outage can be more like a murder mystery. And so what we're doing with observability is the idea of taking this stuff that is hard to interpret on our old monolith, our old hardware or bare bones machines, and now starting to get an understanding of what's going on. And we're going to see examples of this shortly, where it's no longer what happened. It's now, where did it happen? When did it happen? Who did it happen? And it becomes almost like a game of Clue, if you remember that old game, Clue, where, eventually we find out it was Professor Mustard with the wrench in the observatory. And we kind of get that insight into what's going on in our environments. And that's really valuable information. I don't think I need to convince you it's valuable information. That's probably the reason you're here or in your role of understanding observability. But like I said, just I think it's a little humorous quote, if you will. All right. So now that we got the funny out of the way, let's talk a little bit about Sumo Logic and AWS. So come on, slide. There we go. So Sumo Logic has been a committed AWS partner since we began back in 2010. And today we're a proud partner of proud part of the AWS Partner Competency Program, and recognized by AWS as a pre-qualified tool that integrates with and can extend AWS services and management APIs to meet unique customer needs. And we're going to look at through some of these examples shortly, but just wanted to give you a little understanding of how we fit in with AWS. Now, we're going to be using many different sources of data today, but sorry, keep jumping ahead here. But one of the ones I wanted to talk about first is Lambda. What is it? We probably know what it is. I feel like everybody on this call kind of does. If you don't, that's okay too. But in case you don't, as a reminder, it's going to be a service, particularly an AWS service that allows you to run code, and you don't need to provision or manage servers. So basically, you can run code for any application and automatically trigger it from another AWS service, or even call it from a web or mobile application. And so we're going to use that shortly. Come on, mouse. There we go. Sumo Logic has many or multiple capabilities for you to get complete observability of the AWS Lambda functions. So we have support. Let's see, let me get my graphics going. That should be a little, there we go. So we have support for ingesting your critical telemetry data, logs, metrics, and traces. And we can do so via special Sumo Logic sources, including those based on Kinesis for faster performance and better costs, Lambda functions, and Lambda extensions. We have a special AWS Lambda app in the Sumo app catalog that will help you monitor health and performance of your serverless environment. And if you haven't used our apps before, they're really great. What our apps are, and when you say the term app, I'm sure everybody has a different image in their head. But what we mean by apps is we've basically taken a set of data, might be Lambda, might be Apache, could be whatever it is. And we at Sumo Logic have created dashboards and queries that you can essentially overlay on top of that data to get input, or really more output, I guess, from it. So you can take your data, include or attach this app, and it's going to show you your data showing uptime, downtime, whatever it might be that's relevant to that set of data. Just a really simple way to get involved or integrated with your data. Often we find, although maybe not in your role, but many times users will have data in Sumo Logic, they'll go to look at it and they don't really know where to start. And apps are a really good starting place. So just want to kind of plug those. And I'll probably show them later, especially if we have time. They're just a simple feature of Sumo that adds a lot of value. Let's see, what else do we have on this observability for AWS Lambda? So we have the Sumo Logic AWS observability solution that provides a framework to simplify the ingestion and analysis of data from your AWS cloud infrastructure for multiple AWS services, including AWS Lambda. We have those out-of-the-box dashboards and alerts that are specifically built for AWS Lambda. And we'll run through some of those in the next sections of this presentation. So we'll start to see some of that. This solution also has a root cause explorer add-on that will help your on-call staff or DevOps or infrastructure engineers accelerate troubleshooting and root cause isolation for your production incidences in your apps and microservices running on AWS, including AWS Lambda. And then finally, we have tracing visibility into your Lambda function, so you have end-to-end visibility of your transactions that include Lambda calls. So hopefully that makes kind of sense. And now we're going to go ahead and start to play around with the system. So in a nutshell, we can help you with Lambda observability. And now we're going to start to look at what we can do with it. So let's go ahead and let's continue here. And this is just some more images that we'll see this in the app shortly. This slide is our observability slide, or actually our Explore slide. We'll talk about the Explore option just in a moment or two. This is an example of tracing. We'll look at tracing a little bit later today. And then now I want to start to discuss a lab. What happened to my... Sorry about that. I blame the batteries on my mouse, but I'm actually corded, so I'm not quite sure why it's being flaky. Maybe I'm just being a little jumpy myself. What we want to do now is we want to start to talk about the lab activity and kind of set the stage for what the lab activity will entail. And this is just one of the lab activities. We're going to do a few of them. Get back here. There we go. Sorry about that. Okay, so what's going to be our activity? Well, here's the scenario we're going to present to you. Here's the scenario, and then we'll actually get into it. But the scenario is as such. You've been alerted on an incident. As it says here, our end users are experiencing the outage in the coffee app within the US East area in the last 24 hours. So for this scenario, I want you to envision that you're part of Sumo Logic Coffee. And we'll use Sumo Logic Coffee as our example a few times today as well. Sumo Logic Coffee, we're out there, we're selling coffee, very similar to a company that has a green logo. We're worldwide and we're making money, and coffee drinkers are happy. Now, how are we going to use technology and AWS and Sumo to look at transactions involving cups of coffee? That seems pretty old school. How is technology jumping in here? And that's what we're going to show you. So in the scenario here, as I said, our end users are experiencing an outage using the coffee app in the US East 1 area in the last 24 hours. So that we know that information. And I'll repeat this information a few times. You don't need to jot it down. So we get an alert that the problem is on our Lambda server, and we want to start to take a look to see when all this happened. And so that's what we're going to do now. So let's go ahead and start to use Sumo to do this. Now, before we can use Sumo, we need to give you some credentials. I'm going to put these credentials in the chat. Go ahead and log in with them. Put them in real fast, chat. So the website, hopefully you're familiar with. If you're not, that's fine, of course, but it's going to be service.sumologic.com. The email address we're going to use today is going to be training plus analyst number. And I want you to select a 3-digit number. So maybe you want to be training analyst 123, training plus analyst 007, training plus analyst 961. Pick a 3-digit number. And it doesn't really matter what 3-digit number you use. We are a small group, so if we have overlap, that's fine. Once you've used that email to log in, you're going to use the password of Feb 2022 ! So go ahead and log in. If you have any questions, let me know. I'll be transparent. It's probably going to be a typo, but that's okay. That happens to the best of us. And once you get logged in, if you could just let me know the number you're using. Once again, it doesn't matter if there's overlap, but it's just a good confirmation to make sure you can get in and we're all good. So I'm logging in as well. So I have my Sumo here. I'm going to log in as training plus analyst 234 at sumologic.com. and that password of Feb 20, I fingered it, Feb 2022 exclamation point. So once you're logged in, good to see someone logging in already. Hopefully, there we go. All right, now we got some logins. Good. I'll wait a moment or two. I want to just see a few more of you log in. If you can't log in or you don't want to log in, that's perfectly fine. I'm going to show everything that we're doing in the labs on my screen. So you'll still get the value of why we're here today, just won't get the hands-on aspect. So I only see a couple logins, but that's okay. I'm going to just assume everyone else is just kind of chilling or hanging out. So no offense is taken. So, and if you do need help, like I said, please shout. We have, that's why I'm here. Once you log into Sumo, this may be your first time in Sumo. Hopefully not, but certainly might be. And that's fine. And so I want to give you kind of a quick tour, very quick tour. Hopefully you got brought to this screen. If you didn't, you might have been brought to a screen that has tabs open at the top. And the reason these tabs are open is somebody else has used this training account previously. So, just exactly that. Somebody else used the account. They left their stuff open. We can close their stuff by going to this. Yep. We can close their stuff by clicking on any of the tabs. And on the three dots, we have the ability to actually close all the tabs. And so that's what I'd like you to do, ideally, is close all the tabs. And when you do, you should be on the screen that looks like this. And what this screen is showing you is a home page, very similar to any other home page out there, in that it's trying to get you up and running as quickly as possible. So it's showing you the ability to utilize some of these features like log search and metrics and trace, et cetera. We'll use some of these throughout the day. In fact, we'll use some of them in about 30 seconds. We have recently run. So once again, things that you've done recently so that you can go ahead and click on them and jump back to where you are. All right. So we got our labs, we got our Sumo open. And let me go ahead and now jump back into the lab to set the stage a little bit better here, what we're going to do. All right, so what I want you to do, and actually really this will be more of a follow along. Let's treat it like that. What I want us to do is go ahead and start to look at that Lambda issue. And we're going to go through these steps, but I'll do them on the screen so that we can do them together. And I'll go slowly through them. But what we want to now do is we want to now start to use Sumo Logic to go ahead and detect what's going on with our coffee service, specifically in the US East 1 over the last 24 hours. So how are we going to do that? What we're going to do first is we're going to go to Explore within Sumo Logic. There's two ways to get to pretty much everything in Sumo Logic. If you're on the home page already, you can click on the Explore button, or you can go to the New button at the very top and go to Explore. Same difference. So however you want to get there, don't really care, but ultimately, please do get there. So we should be on Explore and we should be in this screen. Your Explore by might have something else, once again, based on if somebody else has already come into the system and played around recently. And if they have, that's fine. What we want to do, though, is we want to modify our Explore by view. We're going to use a few of these views today, but for right now, we want to use one specifically, and the one specifically we want to use is AWS Observability. So I want to choose Explore by and select AWS Observability. And what I should now be presented with is now AWS Observability of my account. In fact, of my accounts, plural. What I have on the left-hand side of the screen here are different accounts. In this case, I've grouped my accounts by dev and prod and staging and a mobile banking app and some other stuff. And so we can start to now segment our data and we can now start to look at specifically what we need. So in this case, we were looking at, or need to look at, US East 1 data in the last 24 hours, and we're going to look in production environment. So we want to look at production. So to look at production, we're going to go to prod on the far left and click on it. The right side is going to modify its view because now we're looking at prod instead of looking at everything. We're starting to use our filters. Now we want to filter even further. Are we interested in US East 2 data? No. In the real world, we might be, but for this example, we've been told US 1 is where the problem is. So we're going to look at US East 1. Now, are we interested in AWS ELB data, AWS EC2 data, Elastic Cache data. No, not for this conversation. That's great data, good, might be helpful, but for this case, it's not really relevant. We're interested in Lambda data. So we're going to go down to US East 1 Lambda and click on it. What you should have, ideally, I'm just going to wait for mine to load, is now a screen that looks almost identical to mine. I'm going to move this to the left a little just to get some more real estate for my screen here. Actually, I'll do a few things here. That should be a lot better. Zoom should be okay. So what we're now looking at on the right-hand panel is our Lambda data. We're seeing geographic information about where our users, or not necessarily our users, but our services, whatever might be logging in from. Now we see a bunch of stuff in here. If we scroll down, we start to see some bad stuff. Bad, but good for our example. What we see here are, over the last 24 hours, there's been a lot of errors. And remember, that's what we're interested in, are the errors in the Lambda environment. So we see there's been 7,000 errors over the last 24 hours. That's not good. Now, remember, we're trying to go deeper than that. We don't want to just see something that's bad. We want to figure out, like that clue game, who done it, where they did it, when they did it. And so we want to dig deeper. We want to get deeper in our observability features or capabilities. We see here database authentication error. And if I scroll to the right, I actually see it's happened a lot of times. And so this is starting to give me an indication of what might have gone wrong. Something with invalid credentials. Okay, now we're starting to get a little bit of a feel of where things might have gone wrong. Still don't know yet, but we're kind of getting there. I want to scroll down a little bit further, and feel free to look at any of these panels. We're really focusing on a few of them, but feel free to poke around here. That's why we're in the lab, for you to mess around, if you will. What I want to focus on now is that number of errors, and specifically the successful and failed requests. What I have down here is this toggle. And what I can do is enable it or disable it. And so if I enable successes, and I'm only looking at successes, you notice in Get Billing Info, there are no successes. Conversely, if I select failures and only failures, I see a lot of failures. What this is telling me now is there's an issue with the Get Billing Info, possibly related to invalid credentials. Don't know that for sure, but kind of the numbers are leading me to believe they're related. And now we need to dig in a little bit further. So there seems to be an issue with credentials, but we don't know who or what credentials. And that's what we want to see if we can figure out. I have my fingers crossed for us to figure this out. Sometimes this example works well, sometimes it doesn't. So I'm going to, like I said, cross my fingers. Let's hope this works. And let's go through this together. So what I want to do is I want to look at this Get Billing Info, because that really seems to be kind of the culprit here. There's a lot of errors or failures related to it. And so I want to go ahead and drill into that. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and open in search. So what I'm doing is I'm going to the most frequent function operations, because I want to start to look at these, and I'm going to select the 3 dots on the far right and click open in search. And if you need help, please let us know. I know I'm kind of hopefully getting you through this. So I'm going to open in search. And what we're now doing is we're looking at our log messages. So we've now taken this data and we're looking at it through our log viewer. And we're now looking at logs. The reason we want to look at logs is we want to ultimately try and figure out what has gone wrong. We see there's some sort of invalid credentials, but whose credentials are they? That's what I want to try and figure out here. And that's where I'm hoping I can complete the lab. So I'm going to go ahead and now utilize a feature that we call Field Browser. To do that, I'm going to go into the Messages tab. And right now, before I get into the Messages tab, I'm looking at an Aggregates tab, which is showing us the results of the math. So we're looking at a bunch of log files, and we're taking those log files, or the system is, and looking for aggregating them, adding them up. But to look at the raw messages, we can click on the Messages tab. And what we're now going to see are those 6,000 log messages. Now we want to look for specific messages. What we want to do here is we want to use our Field Browser, which is this nav bar on the left-hand side of the screen. And we want to, let's see if it's here, we should be able to start to filter our messages. And what we want to filter our messages using is, let's see, where is it? The user information. Here it is, user agent. Or actually, excuse me, username, sorry. What we want to do is we want to look at username, because username should start to tell us some information about who was logging in and who was getting invalid credentials. So if I select username down here, there should just be one user, which is Mark Smith, and that's the example we want to show. And so hopefully you see Mark Smith in there. And if you don't, that's okay. We're just kind of playing around. And when I click on Mark Smith, what I should now see are log messages related to Mark Smith. And what I should now start to see here, let me see if I can find an example, is he is related to the get billing info. So what's happening here essentially is Mark Smith is having an issue with his credentials. We don't know why, but we know there is an issue. So what probably happened is Mark Smith set up the get billing info service with his own credentials previously, and now his credentials have changed. Maybe he left the company or not, but we're starting to get that information. And now we have a whodunit. In this case, once again, it was Mark with the get billing info in the Lambda labs who made a mistake or inputted something incorrectly. We don't really know why he made a mistake or why he has bad credentials, but we are now getting that information. So hopefully that was a sort of okay overview of an example of using Sumo Logic to start to dig into whodunit, essentially. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and I'll go ahead and continue. I'm going to go back to my slides. We're going to not use those credentials for a few moments, but if you want to poke around, like I said, feel free to. This is your time, so go ahead. And here's the key to the problem, if you will. So what we did is we looked at the Lambda, we drilled into Lambda, we looked at the successes and failures, and then figured out that get billing info was the main problem, primarily looking at this graph on the left or chart because it's showing that big spike of failures. Then we drilled into the logs and we used the field browser to look at Mark Smith, and then we saw Mark Smith is doing things. So. What we're going to do now is get into the idea of observing microservices. So I've got a few more slides here, probably about 10 slides, and then we'll get back into labs. So not too slide heavy. So let me get back in slideshow format, and away we go. There. So modern applications are increasingly complex, as you know, and the microservices architecture is beneficial for these complex and evolving applications. These complex applications leverage distributed technologies, cloud infrastructure, container and orchestration tools such as Docker and Kubernetes as well. In addition, the connections between the microservices, the orchestrators, the underlying cloud resources, these are all growing in complexity. And this complexity leads to situations where unforeseen events, unknown unknowns are more prevalent and come with mysterious behaviors and failure modes. And so we want to kind of demystify that, if you will. APM, or application performance monitoring, is going to be an important aspect of observability that we're going to cover now with these new capabilities. Traditionally, metrics have been used to provide classic monitoring. But the problem with metrics is it only looks for the known failure conditions of the application. It only shows kind of the what. It doesn't show us the who, the why, the whodunit kind of thing. Because observability requires us to completely understand the application so that we can go ahead and identify and troubleshoot and fix any conditions, regardless if they're known or unknown, that are about the application and its health. And we can gain insights from the collected data. Just collecting and analyzing metrics and logs is not enough. It requires more than that. Tracing is going to be what comes in here. So tracing the transactions. Troubleshooting problems in real time in distributed, dynamic cloud and microservice environments is very difficult. Transaction tracing is going to make this a lot easier by letting you see details about exactly what is happening and how it impacts or affects your users. And what are transaction traces? And yeah, I feel like you're probably familiar with traces, at least conceptually. I hope. If not, that's fine as well. So what is a transaction trace? A transaction trace gives us a detailed snapshot of a single transaction lifespan across your application environment. A trace follows the course of a user's request or system call from the sources to the ultimate destination. You can use transaction tracing to profile, monitor microservices-based apps and architectures, locate failures, improve performance. In fact, logs and metrics are the three pillars of the observability system. And I was trying to show that in this diagram right here. They're complementary to each other, but tracing is the backbone of the observability solution. And so for tracing, think of it like when you go to track or trace a package. You order a package and it arrives to you, hopefully. Well, until it arrives to you, you might be curious about the path it's taken. Now, it's probably not going to take a direct path to you. It's probably going to go from the shipper's location to, depending on where you are, maybe to a shipping facility. It might board a plane. It might fly across the country. It might then get put in a truck. It then might be put into a train, and go back across the country. And when you're using a tracker for a package, you can see these hops, these destinations, these points in the process. And you can also start to recognize if things are weird about them. If you live in New York and you order a package from New Jersey and you see your package go from New Jersey to California to Wyoming back to New York, that's probably weird. Now, it might be valid. Maybe there was a shipping issue or what have you, but that's some information that might be interesting to you. And so that's what we can start to show you. And so you can use transaction traces, like I said, for these three examples or use cases and more, I'm sure. All right. So now let's talk about tracing with the Sumo Logic Coffee. So as described earlier, we're going to start to look at that. Before we do, I just want to go over a quick, and I kind of have mentioned this already, but talking about how tracing plays a crucial role in tracking these transactions. So Sumo Logic Coffee, our company, requires going through servers, it requires going through databases, other hardware, software, and observability means being able to ask any question you need about your application and how customers are interacting with it. With Sumo's query language, you're going to do this with logs and traces. This is a large differentiator because no other tool provides the ability to slice and dice your span data using a powerful query language like Sumo's. What we need is a view into this app's environments, and we're going to talk about some of those views right now. So let's go ahead and proceed to see how tracing works with the help of a simple example. So here's our example. There. So once again, welcome to Sumo Logic Coffee. We're that international coffee chain. We have thousands of locations around the world. And in this scenario, Sumo Logic Coffee has made available online ordering to customers in 2 locations as a pilot program. So we're worldwide, but we're starting to use our online ordering app in 2 locations, and we'll see those locations shortly. And we've also expanded our menu. So we're also serving pastries in our 2 pilot locations. So we're known for coffee, we're moving into the pastry business. And once again, how can technology help us? Well, let's talk about an order at Sumo Logic Coffee. Now, it sounds pretty straightforward. You go in, you order a cup of coffee, and you get it. And that's true, but there's a few more steps in there. And in regards to those steps, this is almost acting as various microservices. So what happens when you order coffee? Well, the customer's going to place the order, probably through the app, maybe directly to the barista, but ultimately the barista is going to get that order. Now, the barista is there to do the manual work. He or she needs to get that coffee machine up and running, needs to check that the machine has appropriate levels of ingredients, that it has the right amount of beans and the right amount of water. And if it does, it's going to grind those beans, it's going to add that water, magic is going to happen, and now you have a cup of coffee that's going to be ready for the customer. Now, at Sumo Logic Coffee, we are a for-profit organization. We are here to make money, and so we're not just giving our coffee away for free. Someone needs to pay for that. So the customer needs to pay for that order. We're going to assume credit cards, no cash. The credit card is then approved. If not, that's an issue, but assuming the credit card does get approved, the customer then picks up their coffee or picks up their order, and now they're a happy customer and they go on their way. And so in that regard, each step is a microservice. And what we're going to start to see when we get into tracing is those microservices, those steps. Did that bean level get checked adequately? Was there enough water in the system? Did the customer's credit card pass? Did the barista actually get the order? And et cetera, et cetera. Little microservices review, just taking that slide that I showed previously and just expanding on it to have a front end and a back end, because there are both that are going to take place in our environment. The front end service is that app that the customer is using to order the coffee or the pastries from. But on the back end is that coffee processing. And so as I was starting to describe, we have the order being placed, the barista enables or turns on the coffee machine, a machine service is going to start that's going to enable the coffee service and the water services, the two pieces that go together to make coffee. There's going to be a payment system as well, because we need to calculate the individual's order. If they order 2 muffins and an espresso, that's going to be a different price than 3 bagels and an Americano. And so something needs to calculate how much they owe us. SQL records are going to be used to keep track of the individual pricing for each item. And so combined, you get our payment system. Okay, a couple more slides here and then we'll get to the lab, or we're getting close. What I want to talk about next is real user monitoring, or RUM as it's referred to. I was going to say, hopefully you're aware of RUM. I take that back. You might be, you might not be. If you are, cool. If you aren't, that's fine as well. So in regards to real user monitoring, or RUM, this is where the browser is going to show us any user-facing transactions. So what we're going to start to be able to see is from the user's experience, so from their point of view, not from our point of view, we're going to start to, or ultimately hope to, describe and tell the story of the end-to-end life of a transaction. So starting with that user experience point of view, we need to start with the user browser. What type of browser? What information was this person, what environment was this person using the app in? And so that's where real user monitoring is going to start to help us. The benefits of real user monitoring are well, presented right here. Certainly performance, to understand a user's performance. Are they getting stuck with networking issues? Is the UI painting things properly, loading the page properly and timely, or not? And then we can start to dig into that. Visualizing, so being able to visualize the code and see what's going on in there is quite important to observability. And then the insights that we're going to gain are really going to be powerful for us, because what we can start to gain, and we're going to see in a moment, are things about the user's experience, their geolocation, the browser they're using, and other information. If somebody's in Europe using Chrome and somebody else is in Asia using Firefox, that's going to be interesting to us. Maybe we need to make our web pages adjust to the regions and the web browsers and support them both. And so that's going to be important to us as an organization to get the largest amount of customers as possible. So now we're going to go ahead and I'm going to do, well, we'll do it together. I'll start it, but yeah, we'll do this one together. What I want to do is I want to show, let me go ahead and I can even put it in the chat here if you want to play around with it, is a RUM walkthrough. So what I want to start with first is the first thing that the user is going to experience. And let me just grab this link again, sorry. URL, paste it in. And so what we have here is, fingers crossed this loads properly. I'm sure we can all relate when I'm doing a live demo. But what we should get, perfect, is our app. So imagine you're a Sumo Logic coffee drinker, you're part of our pilot program, and you're now able to join the app. So here's the app, and we can go ahead and order a cappuccino and an Americano, and start to add these things in. And so if you want to go ahead and play with it, I feel like we all know what an app looks like, especially a food-related one. But that's the idea here, is we have our website, we have the ability to interact with the interface. And so what we want to do is start to look at what users are doing, how they are interacting with this specific app, this menu item. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and investigate. So what we're going to do, I'll do these steps with you. So while they are on the screen, I'm going to show them. We're going to use the same set of credentials we used earlier. Hopefully you're still logged in. You shouldn't be timed out. If you are, just go ahead and log back in. If you need help getting logged back in, just let me know as well. So what I'm going to do here is go back into Sumo Logic. I can keep my tabs open or not, doesn't really matter. I'm going to close them just to get them out of the way. Close all of them. What I want to do though is I want to go to new, and I want to go to Explore again. So if you still have the Explore open, that's fine. I'm just going to go to a new one just to kind of start from fresh. Start fresh. So I'm going to go ahead and click Explore. Either one, doesn't matter. And now you're probably in the Explore by tab that we looked at earlier. Earlier, we were looking at AWS observability with the Lambda example, which is great, but that's not the example we want to look at now. What we want to do is we want to explore by real user monitoring, easy for me to say. So go ahead and choose the Explore by and go down to the bottom-ish and select that real user monitoring. When you do, you should now be brought into the Coffee app. And we see that application. And what we see on the right side is we're starting to see that information that's going to help us understand what's occurring. Now we're going to go into a different dashboard here, but this one is fine. If you're on it already, let's talk through this one. What we see here is good information. We see top browsers by request. So remember, we have this pilot program running. Well, we see the majority of people are using Chrome. Secondary is Firefox. Maybe we need to tailor our website. Maybe when we made our website, Firefox was more prominent and we did not include features that are now available in Chrome, and we should, and maybe we need to redesign our web page. We see our operating systems. Well, everyone's using Linux. Remember, test data. And we see our geolocations. So here are our two locations that are participating in our pilot program, California and Germany. And we see information about that. As we start to scroll down here, we're going to get more insight into what's going on. And I'm going to talk about this in a moment, but before I do, I just want to go over this left nav bar. There's a lot on the screen, so kind of need to jump around a little bit here and there. But remember, we're looking at the Coffee Bar app on the far left, but we can drill down further, to go ahead and utilize RUM and go down to 3 levels. The 3 levels we can go down to are the application, which is going to correspond to the value of the application tag that's going to be set. So it should be a name, something kind of easily recognized. We're going to have our service. So now we have, within our application, we have our Coffee Bar front-end service. We could have a coffee and back-end service, various services. And then we have our specific action that's taking place. So this is that specific website that I pointed you to. So just the ability to drill in here. On the top, I'm going to stay within the Coffee Bar app. We have different dashboards. The other dashboard I want to show you, which is very, very similar, is number 13, Performance Analytics. So if you select that, it's a little bit different, but not that much. But what it allows us to do is now start to see that information I was showing earlier. It also allows us to start to filter. So what I could start to do is say, you know what? We're doing this pilot program in the US and Germany. I'm only in charge of the US side. Bob, he's based in Berlin and he's piloting or part of that Germany side. I only care about California data. And now I can start to use my filters and start to see what California users are doing. And so I see they're using Chrome, still using Linux, kind of same information we saw earlier, but starting to filter down, which can certainly be quite helpful, of course. So what these dashboards are showing us is the ability, or not necessarily the ability, but they're analyzing down here the load and paint timings for page documentations for either the application, the service, or the action. But essentially, it's starting to show us, when did the page load? When did the page finally load? When did the page become interactive? This might be important to us. We might not care that the page didn't finish loading, but as long as it's interactive, that might be sufficient for a user to place their order for their croissant and their coffee. They don't need a full page. They got enough, enough drawn. And so we're starting to see this performance data. We can then continue to start to correlate it or tie it back to specific browsers. Maybe in Firefox, and once again, we just don't have enough data really to show it, but maybe in Firefox, the time to be interactive is quick, but in Chrome it isn't. And maybe there's code or reasons for that. And now we're starting to hopefully understand that. So this is giving us insight into what users are actually doing with their application or their tool. Let's see, there's more dashboards. I don't want to go through each one, although I kind of am, I guess. This application level, kind of the same idea, just flipping the data a little bit differently. What we're looking at here now is our application, our coffee bar, that app, but we've taken it and now we're looking at, instead of looking for all the data, we're looking for the top N, in this case, the top 10. So now we see the top 10 browsers, the top 10 operating systems, and this might be a better view for us. The data isn't changing, just kind of different ways to express it. And so this might be good to understand where the slowest and fastest browsers are occurring. Is it related to geographical locations or not? And starting to get that insight. And then, so yeah, I mean, I could show you that kind of showed, they're all pretty similar in the same respect of just looking at various aspects of the environment. I didn't show this one yet, the application health across services. We'll look at this service map feature in a few moments. So I guess this is getting a little ahead of myself. But once again, just more ways to view this data. And that's kind of the goal, is to give you as much as possible. All right, so let's go ahead. Hopefully you've been kind of poking around in here with me. If not, that's okay. What I want to do is just walk through this again with you. So although, well, I guess we kind of did it already, but I did actually kind of do it. So hopefully you were able to log in, go to real user monitoring, take a look at the Coffee Bar app, see stuff. Just hopefully data showed up, which it should. You were probably in the overview by default, which is good, but just other ways to present data. Also, gives us the ability to start to utilize those filters if we want to or not. Also in this one, we have the ability to start to compare this data with a previous time period, which might be helpful. All right, let's see, anything else I want to tell you about these dashboards? A couple slides just to, although let me just get back to my slide deck just to about so here, when we were looking at the data, we can start to associate it. So on the top, we're looking at the website performance, and I was describing that time to paint, time to load. Well, we're looking at the paint timings down below here, and we're also looking down here at the request per second. Now, the request dropped when the paint timings increased. Maybe people are not going to use the app because they saw it loads slowly, and that's just frustrating. And they say, all right, I'm going to use another coffee vendor because it's not loading properly. And so we can start to get that information, and that's what we want to point you to. And that's what the metrics, as it says here, are leading us to understand. Kind of getting in the weeds, I mean, it's in a good way, but in regards to the painting or the loading of pages. And so what we're trying to show here are those various aspects. So you go to a website, hopefully it appears, and it appears to be very simple in that respect. It magically shows up and you're good to go. But of course, there's things happening on the back end, and we as DevOps or SREs or in our role want to know about these things. And so there's a process. First, the DNS is going to be called TCP connection, SSL, the GET, the response. Hopefully it's going to process properly. Then it's going to load. And so we're starting to see all these steps in our view. We can also start to utilize the filters down here to view those specific steps. So maybe we want to see, like I showed earlier, the time to interactive, the time to page end, and we can start to select those and see what's going on here. Same idea here. Here we see the first contentful paint to the largest, and we see those are pretty much the same, showing us basically the page loads on first paint, give or take a millisecond or two. All right. What I want to look at next is, let me see if I can find it first, is in the Coffee Bar app in Real User Monitoring. I want us to go to dashboard 4. Which should look something like this. And what I want us to look at, I'm just trying to make sure I have an example here. There we go, perfect. Is this latency dashboard or panel, this one right here. So I want to look at this. This one is interesting to me because it's showing latency. It's also showing very high peaks of latency as well, associated with our application, our coffee application, or our pastry application, I guess more specifically. So what I want to do here is I want to, like I said, I want to start to drill into this. I'm going to go ahead and let's see, how do I want to approach this? What should happen, let's see. Let me just make sure this, no, that's not what I want to do. Let me see, why is it not letting me do what I want to do? What I want to do is I want to drill into that latency. And no, it's not letting me. What should happen is I get a dialog on the left-hand, on the right-hand side of the screen. This was working yesterday. Let's see. Coffee Bar app. There we go. And latency. And why is it not popping up? And this is a little bit of a bummer. Let's see. What I want to, there we go. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to go to my latency and I want to click on the peaks. And when I do, what I should have happen is on the right-hand side of the screen, this dialog opens up that I was trying to describe. So you should have this screen here. So once again, go to latency, pick one of the peaks, open, it should open on the right-hand side of the screen. What we can do to take this even further is we can start to look at, let me see if it's in here. No, I'm missing one. I should have a service. My service. There's no data point. So then I want to go to open in traces. Let me just see if this works, because if it doesn't, we can get to this another way. Yeah, it's not true. All right, so it's working exactly like I wanted, but we're still going to look at tracing a little bit later. So, but it's okay. We're still going to do a better example of this. So, what we wanted to show here really is, and just to kind of, just to not stop here, but to pause this. So we looked at real user monitoring. We're seeing information about latency, and then we can start to dig into information about that latency and start to see why it's being caused. And that's what we're starting to get to. What I want to get into now is service maps and then ultimately tracing. These are better examples that they work better. I think they're just going to be a little more illustrative. So I'm going to go ahead and divert to them. And so what I want to do is I want to talk about service maps. Service maps, like it says here, they're going to be high-level application environment view. And so to view them, too many windows, I'm sorry. I'm going to go to plus new, and I'm going to go to service map. And once again, this is just another observability tool you have in your Swiss Army knife. So we looked at explore, we looked at, and that's really about all we looked at so far. We're still going to do a few more of these. We're doing service map right now. We're going to do traces in a moment. We'll do spans later. Might do root cause if there's time. What I see on this screen are my service maps. And what I see here are my applications. In this case, I have multiple applications because it's a lab or test environment. I want to select the specific application I'm interested in, which is the coffee app. Once again, keeping with the coffee bar theme. So I'm going to select the coffee bar app. When I do, the application should be shown. The other application should be removed. And now I start to see my coffee bar app. I start to see other aspects of the coffee bar process. I see the cash desk responsible for that payment transactions. I see the coffee machine representing really the physical coffee machine. I see those machine services, that coffee service, that water service that are going to be utilized to create the cup of coffee. I see that they're in red. Red, not good. Or red's an anomaly. I guess saying it's not good is not fair, but is an anomaly. When I mouse on these, I see the anomaly or start to see some information. So I'm seeing information about latency. Now, I don't know what's causing it. That's what I'm about to start to dig into, but I'm starting to get this information, which is quite helpful from a visual standpoint. So now I can see over the last, 72 hours, there's some issues here. What we want to dig in to do now is figure out what's causing those issues. What's the problem with the coffee service and the water service? Well, we're going to find that out in a few moments. For this example, what I want us to do, really that's about it for this portion. We kind of saw what we needed to see in there. So I wanted to just show the service map, the visual component of it. But now what I want to do is I wanted to start to bring us into traces. Remember I mentioned traces earlier, traces like a transaction when you place an order, a shipping trace of seeing where something comes from, gets to, why it's delayed. That's what this information is going to be able to tell us. And for this feature, we're going to use a new section of Sumo. We're going to use the traces. So what we're going to do is going to go to plus new and go to traces now. When I go to traces, by default, and I will want to start to do a little filtering here, but by default, what I'm going to see are all the traces, all the transactions in my environment. Now here I'm seeing some traces and transactions that are related to coffee and some that are not. I want to, or I will actually go ahead and start to edit these, or not edit these, excuse me, but filter these. So what I'm going to do with this first line here is I'm going to do service equals the coffee bar front end. Because in this case, I just want to look at coffee bar stuff. I don't want to look at other things we have in here, just other lab or test data we have. And we're going to do it for any span. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to click search, and I should start to get data. Now I want to modify this a little bit more. What I want to do here is I want to go ahead and add in a specific, really just more kind of filter. Actually, let me modify, let me do a couple things here. This should be service equals, should just be the coffee bar. Any span. Cool. So I meant to do coffee bar. Sorry, I think I said coffee bar front end, but we want to actually do the coffee bar. So now I'm starting to see all these orders. And these orders are giving me information about the order, the trace ID. Whoop, didn't mean to click on that yet. We're going to click on it in a few minutes. When did the order start? So when did the order come in? How long did the order take? Remember, we're trying to give users a fast, good cup of coffee. We want to make sure they get it quickly. We're seeing information about errors, and we're going to go ahead and use some of these examples in a moment, but we're starting to get this information. So now this is giving us the ability to view our transactions. And that's what I wanted to show here. When we click on one of these, we actually will see the individual transaction / trace and what happened, what occurred. So I'm going to pick one of these. For right now, it really doesn't matter which one. I just want to show you the example. And now what I start to see at the top of the screen are the services that were used to create this transaction or this order. So I see the coffee bar front end. I see some Lambda is being used here to check suites. I see the service for the app that was being used and some other stuff. Down below here, I'm seeing the subcomponents or the microservices. For example, we're getting the coffee. Here's the portion of getting coffee. Here's the post for the coffee. Here's the machine service. And we're going to go through these as an example more specifically in a few moments. I see the cash desk and I see other information. I also see this red line. This red line is not good. This means there's an error or an issue. And so what we'll want to do shortly, we're going to go ahead and do this in a few moments, is start to look at these issues and see what caused them and try and figure out what caused the issue and, equally important, how to resolve it. All right, let's go ahead and let's do a hands-on exercise now. And I'll walk through it with you. It's kind of where I was going already, but now we're going to go ahead and use the service map and use the traces together to start to get what we need to show the example. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to New and Service Map like I did earlier. Actually, I'm going to close all my other tabs. Let's start fresh. So sorry about that. New Service Map. As I showed earlier, I'm going to do the coffee bar because that's all I'm interested in. And what I should see are red circles, specifically around coffee service and water service. Those are what I'm going to use as my examples, to pinpoint my examples. So that's where we're going to kind of drill into. So what I want to do is I want to select one of these. Let's do the coffee service. And let's stay consistent. So let's everybody do the coffee service. When I click on the coffee service, on the right-hand side, I get that nav bar that I was trying to show earlier, which is going to give me some information about the coffee service, latency. But what it's going to do, in addition, that might be more helpful here, is it's going to allow me to open this coffee service in a variety of different environments. Now, we don't want to use metrics. We don't want to use root cause explorer. We want to use traces because I want to look at those transactions that are associated with the coffee service and try and figure out what went wrong with the coffee service. So once again, I'm going to click traces. And what I should have when I get to the screen is the application equals the coffee bar app and the service equals the coffee service. And I have all my transactions down here. Just want to make sure everyone's there. Cool. Now what I want to do is I want to go ahead and look at one of these records and look at what occurred with the coffee service. So what I'm going to do here is I should be able to click on any of these log messages. I should be able to pick any of these. And what I want us to notice, and it's really hard to see here, is, and I'm going to zoom in, but what I want to draw your eye to is this portion right here. So in these log messages, you should have ones that have errors. If you don't, just go to another trace, excuse me, and look for a trace that has red and specifically has red in this area. Either the blue or the brown has red. Now, what does that mean? Why is this red? What this is starting to do is show us what went wrong. Now, I don't want to reveal what went wrong because I want the logs to really show us, to truly give us the impact of ta-da, but this is what we're about to get to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this guy that has the red at the lowest level. Once again, it might be brown or whatever color this is. It might be blue, but hopefully it's one or the other. Now, when I click on the blue, I know there's an error because it's red. I know it's related to the water service because it's the water service, not because it's blue, that's coincidental, but it's related to the water service. So what I'm going to do here is I want to look at these logs because the logs should give me an indication of what went wrong. Why did this order or this transaction fail? Let's figure it out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open the logs. I'm going to choose the span ID. This is just going to give me less data in a good way. It's going to just explicitly tell me kind of what went wrong, because I'm going to look just at this little guy. I'm not going to look at the whole transaction. And when I click on that first one, I have a pretty good idea of what went wrong. If I read my log messages going from the bottom to the top, because they're in chronological order, reverse chronological order, I see the order. I see the info. Order received for water. Coffee needs water. What happened? Why did this error fail? Why this order fail? Or why was there an error associated with it? Well, very simply, there was not enough water in the system. So the barista went to brew the cup of coffee. The coffee machine requested water. The machine said, we don't have water in the machine, can't brew you a cup of coffee. And that's where the problem was. Now, how do we resolve this in the future? What do we do with this action? Well, ultimately, you need to decide. Maybe we take our hopper and make sure it has more water. Maybe we train our employees to refill water every 30 minutes instead of every hour. But this is what the information is showing us. And showing us in, as I mentioned earlier, a non-technical area. No, not non-technical, but brewing a cup of coffee, typically you don't have insight to microservices and all that, but we do, and now we can figure out what went wrong. And that's an example of how troubleshooting with Sumo Logic is good, and how you can go ahead and start to utilize that observability. Let's see, what else do I want to talk about? I'm running out, not running out, but just a couple more things. Well, like I said, we'll get you out of here a little early, which I think is good for everybody. Let's see. Oh, the last thing I want to talk about, I haven't yet, are spans. Let's see where they are here, just a couple slides. So a span walkthrough. And what is a span? So when I refer to spans or span analytics, come on. What you can do with span analytics is you can perform an advanced, flexible, ad hoc query analysis for application level data. So what you can do is you can filter and aggregate by standard or custom span attributes, which are referred to as tags, and create charts to visualize the results. So it's another visualization here. To access the span feature, you're going to go to that plus new again. We went to traces today. We went to service map today. We went to explore today. Well, you can also go to spans. So I want to show that. So I'm going to go to plus new and then show you these spans. When I go in here, yeah, I guess I haven't used this account before. It's going to give you a little understanding of what span analytics are. So feel free to read it. Hopefully it's kind of in line with what I'm describing. But ultimately I'll just click, I'll click back here, click skip. And what I now have is the ability to start to utilize or leverage this power of the Sumo Logic query language here. And I can start to utilize these filters and start to build a query using these two boxes up here, both the filter and the visualize. For this example, I'm going to show it. Feel free to join me. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start to filter our coffee service. So I'm going to go ahead and look for our filter. I'm going to do the service equals the coffee bar front end. So I'm able to select my filter of what I want to filter. I then want to choose the visualize option. What I can do here is decide what do I want to aggregate our data on. What I'm going to do here for just an example is I'm going to do duration percentage 95. So I want to look for those that have a duration of 95%. And I want to group our data based on time, specifically based on 1 minute time periods. And when I click start, what I now should get is that visualization of our coffee bar front end data or service, the duration being 95%, and grouping it in time. And so then I start to get that output down below. And so now I'm getting a visualization of the coffee bar front end duration. Now, when I do this, I get put into this aggregates tab because I'm doing math, but I also have or should have, under the messages tab, here we go, I then have what we call facets. The facets panel is very similar to our field browser in that it shows up on the left, it's down here, it lets you check things. But ultimately, the content of this facet panel is going to be impacted by our filters. And it's going to look for or show any metadata tags which are attributed to spans that also would include any custom tags. And so what we can do is we can start to utilize these and filter these if we want to. Maybe we want to also filter on geolocation. Maybe we just want to look on those at those US individuals. And now my data, when I refresh this, is going to be adjusted as such. And maybe we need to dig in and figure out why there are spikes for duration previously when they're warranted, and go down that path. And so that's what this spans is going to do. And that's what under the messages, these facets allow us to do. Essentially, they're really just fields. Facets is a fancy name for them. All right. Let's go ahead and wrap things up. I know we showed you a lot. I know we kind of jumped around here. Hopefully, I see most of you stuck around, which is great to see. Let's go ahead and wrap this up. Let's get you home early. So down here, like I said, just have a couple slides to finish up with. So in conclusion, once this loads, there we go. So we used RUM and we used service maps. We did actually a lot of different things here. So the service maps, we used the RUM dashboards, those real user monitoring dashboards. We used tracing to see those traces, those transactions, and drill down to the logs. We used, although we didn't do much with it, the span analytics to start to utilize the Sumo query language and look at those spans and filter on what we need. And what I have next is really just some kind of next steps here for you. So tracing is important, I mean, now you kind of know, but next steps. Wanted to encourage you to do a free sign up for Sumo. So let me go ahead and put this link in the chat. It's quite a mouthful, so I just want to put it in there. So this is going to allow you to get a free trial of Sumo. Strongly encourage you to do so if you haven't or are not using Sumo. There we go. That should be in the chat now. Yeah, there it is. So free trial sign up. Also want to remind you about getting certified. And I want to just show this real quickly. This will be the last thing we do. And let me just log in. Sorry, I should have done this earlier. Let me go ahead and log in just with a different account. The training account will not show this as well as it should. So what I want to do is ultimately, and I want you at some point to take advantage of our certification and our learning of Sumo Logic. So let me just show this real fast. So I'm going to log in with just my other training account. Finger everything. Here we go. So when you get logged in with your own account, the Learn tab, certainly a great place to highlight. Going to allow you to learn more about Sumo Logic. We have videos, we have documentation, just all kinds of areas to get more information about Sumo. But I also wanted to promote our certification because it's a great way for you to prove you've learned about Sumo and also get knowledge. These are skills you can acquire. And so through the certification is free for everybody. Takes a second to load. And when it finally does, what I want to point out is the ability for you to listen or watch some live training, but also get certified. What we have in here are a bunch of different certification exams. There's about 20 of them, different languages as well, based on different areas of Sumo Logic. So for fundamentals, you can take an exam, administration, etc. And so, like I said, always, learning is always important, always good. And so I did want to end today with just reminding you about, or introducing you as well to our certification program and inviting you to be part of it. So thank you for attending today. I hope you enjoyed the session. I did, I had a good time. Thanks again for attending. We'll follow up with these. I think we'll be sending out an email that should have the slides and the recording as well. I believe we'll be doing that probably tomorrow. But once again, thank you for attending and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you all.